And the story which he could obtain the right to was Little Nemo. Little Nemo was a weekly newspaper comic strip that was on the Sunday edition of Herald Tribune, which had the headquarters in New York City. It was in color and occupied one whole page. You see the title over here, Little Nemo in Slumberland? So it's about Nemo having a strange dream every episode. In this episode, the boy's bed grows long legs and walks out of the room. The legs get longer and longer over the buildings, but as the legs get entangled, the boy drops and wakes up from the dream. It was simple as that, but it was extremely popular back then. It was actually considered to be the most popular piece in the history of American comics. Every episode completes in a page, and every ending was Nemo falling from the bed to wake up from his dream. But the stories varied so much. It was so popular to the point that if someone made an anime out of it, Mickey Mouse couldn't have beaten its sales. What Fujioka accomplished during this time was really incredible. Why I say incredible is because he didn't only obtain the right to make the anime version of Nemo, he also hired the members of Disney's 9 Old Men, who had made Fantasia and Snow White. 9 Old Men sounds to me like the 7 dwarves from Snow White. Anyway, Fujioka succeeded in having Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnston join the project as technical staff. Next, he got George Lucas as the producer and Ray Bradbury as the screenplay writer. Finally, he won a contract with a sponsor from the Japanese side. That famous loan shark company, Acom. Acom became like a faucet where money comes out without limit. The production team consisted of both Japanese and American staff. The American technical staff, like 9 Old Men, were summoned to teach the Japanese staff animation, and those were Miyazaki, Takahata, and Yoshifumi Kondo. Fujioka took the incredible team of Japanese staff to Hollywood and had 9 Old Men give them lessons. It hardly sounded true. What Fujioka did to have the American creators recognize Takahata and Miyazaki's talent was to make a subtitled version of The Castle of Cagliostro, which had just completed, and Chia the Brat that Takahata had directed. Fujioka held screenings in the US to promote these animes to the American staff, celebrities, movie makers, or TV producers who were interested in animation. He just showed and showed and showed. He held crazy amounts of screenings. And people were truly astonished when they saw the films. 9 Old Men watched Cagliostro and said, it was so well made that they doubted if there was anything they could teach its creators. Steven Spielberg also accidentally watched Cagliostro and later commented, I never shoot car chases because I can never beat the ones in Cagliostro. It's all thanks to Fujioka's screenings, about which he didn't discriminate who to show. Even John Lasseter, who later made Pixar and became a master movie director, watched it too. He wanted to join Disney to make animation, but after he was dragged into one of the screenings, he decided to become Miyazaki's apprentice. So, the total budget of $24,400,000 was said to all come from Acom. But if the money was properly sent and all the staff members were able to work efficiently. Miyazaki's official film in the 1980s after The Castle of Cagliostro was gonna be Little Nemo. Miyazaki won an Academy Award for animated feature many years later, but if he directed Little Nemo, he probably would have been able to prove his talent in Hollywood 20 years before that. But unfortunately, the production of Little Nemo strayed from the predicted course and couldn't get back on track. It ended up taking 10 years to complete. Meanwhile, most of the gorgeous primary members left the project, and the budget, which seemed like an infinite amount, was used up, including an extra $4,400,000 Acom later added. They barely had enough to advertise. The production ended with such little money, so even though they screened all throughout the US, the sales did so poorly, and accordingly, they only made about $2 million. So it was a complete failure. Later, it won some awards in the US, but just like Cagliostro, it wasn't a commercial success at all, and Fujioka died a broken-hearted man a year before the movie was released. The biggest reason for the failure was that George Lucas left the project first. When Lucas left, he said, "Rather than me getting involved in animation, I know a better man." Then he introduced the producer of Star Wars called Gary Kurtz. It's been said that Kurtz was the reason everything went wrong. Well, at least that's what Otsuka said. Because every decision he made was bad. The budget amount of $28,800,000 didn't just disappear. It was all spent on the endless production. But no matter how much money they spent on storyboards, pilot films, or test shots, Kurtz would reject all of them. But the only reason to do so was just because he didn't like them. Why was he so egoistic though? Well, it was the first time for Kurtz to produce an animation, and his reference was Walt Disney. Walt Disney was also someone who only depended on his creative instinct and said, "This is good" or "This is bad." It's been said Kurtz imitated that style. But Disney was someone who never let his people call him Mr. Disney. All employees of the Walt Disney Company called him by his first name, Walt. And Disney himself also remembered the faces of all of his employees and called them by their first names. Dictatorship works fine in such a relationship. Once they leave the workplace, the employees and the CEO are friends and families. They're equal. But the moment they started working, Disney dictated all creative decisions. It worked because there was a balance. Even so, Disney was embroiled in a labor movement with Pinocchio, which gave him a terrible experience. Kurtz imitated Disney during his golden age. But he and George Lucas were famous misanthropes, so Kurtz didn't have the same balance Disney had. So Kurtz rejected Miyazaki's storyboards one after another. On the other hand, Miyazaki wanted to make Little Nemo his story like he had always done. So he came up with so many ideas and proposed them, which he later used for Princess Mononoke and Nausicaa. But Kurtz rejected them all. Not only that, he didn't explain why. Therefore, Miyazaki was the first one to leave the project. And many people later followed. Gary Kurtz and Fujioka were the only two who were in the team until the end. Kurtz kept on saying no without any reasons, so the staff had to struggle to find solutions without having many clues as to what would be acceptable. But they did finish the film, which is now on video. It's called Little Nemo. You can buy it too, but the best part is the pilot film Kondo and Kazuhide Tomonaga made. It's a short 3-minute clip that you can also watch on YouTube, but it's amazing. I imagine if George Lucas was the producer, not Gary Kurtz, or if Fujioka had more control over the production than he actually did, then Takahata and Miyazaki would have stayed as the directors of the movie. Then I'm sure the cultural power relationships of the world would definitely have changed. Back in the 80s in Japan, YMO in music, Sony in technology, and the later bubble economy contributed to the world trend, which was called Japan is #1. If Miyazaki and Takahata emerged in the world's film industry with images greater than Star Wars, Japan would have topped and ruled the world in terms of culture. This is my delusion. Japan would have topped and ruled the world. Anyway.